Yeah, I can. The Chinese have at least twice as much gold as America does. Twice as much. I'm sure of that. And I often think about gold. What is the point of it? Everyone could say it's natural money. I've got a little gold necklace that I wear. Gold is indestructible. And gold was in the dust which formed the solar system. So that means this little bit of gold that's hanging around my neck is not just older than the Earth itself, it's older than the solar system. And so touching this little gold that I'm touching now, that is the closest I will ever come to touching eternity. And I think it's a very profound thought. It's the most incredible substance. It's the very first metal that human beings used. We would have found there's a lot more surface gold in the Stone Age, and we would have found bits of golds we hunted and gathered, nuggets in riverbeds and so on. And we would have worn it, displayed it. Look at me, I've got this lovely necklace, mate with me. Look, aren't I a high status guy? We would have used it as barter, as a reward, as a prize, all the rest of it. So exactly the same things we use it for today. Store wealth, display wealth, show accomplishment, show prowess, all the rest of it. And it's a beautiful thing, gold. And I argue that human beings actually have an instinct for gold. It is the instinct for gold is the oldest commercial instinct of the human race, the first commercial instinct almost of the human race. So that's quite a profound anthropological connection we have with this extraordinary metal. But then again, you can go, well, the horse was transport for thousands of years, and then they invented the motor car, so we no longer need the horse. Isn't gold just the same? And gold's future is just as jewelry. That's all. Maybe a few weirdos on the internet will say we're going to go back to a gold standard, but apart from them, it's just jewelry. Maybe a few others, a little bit of insurance as well. Nobody else's liability, money outside of the system. Maybe that's the future of gold. Jewelry and a little bit of insurance. Possibly. If we're going into the world of where Bitcoin's probably done more than anything to expose the fraud of fiat currency. It's been the most wonderful educative tool in that regards. Kids the world over, just through memes and just by buying Bitcoin, the under 30s, the under 40s, the under 20s, just have an understanding of inflation and fiat money and all its evils that you couldn't have taught them in the schools. It's just happened because of Bitcoin and all the associated stuff that comes with it, cryptocurrencies and all the rest of it. But if you look at governments around the world, most of them don't own cryptocurrency, but they all own gold. So given the choice between gold and cryptocurrency, they're going to favor the one that they own. They favor the one they have more control over. They're going to favor the one that human beings have an instinct for. So even though gold is a sort of anti-state money, it's actually going to have governments on our side in the sort of what is going to be the money of the future. And then you look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is basically all the countries along the Silk Road. India to the south, Russia to the north, China to the east, the Arab nations to the west. Not all of them are friends of the United States. In fact, most of them are enemies of the United States. The United States uses the dollar as a tool of war, and countries have always used money as a tool of war. We did it against the Germans in World War II. But obviously they've shut Iran out of the financial system, they've shut Russia out of the financial system. All those countries, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, central bank gold buying for 2 years now has been at its highest rate since the 1960s. Who's buying the gold? All countries along the Silk Road, for the most part. Why are they buying gold? Then you look at Chinese treasury holdings, 1.2 trillion a few years ago. In just a few years, every month, they're just coming off a little bit. We're at 800 billion now. They've come off by a third. But China does it incrementally, month by month. So it's like a frog torch or whatever they call it.
And just so people understand, you're saying the Chinese holdings of U.S. Treasury securities is eroding.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Their US dollar holdings have come off about 5%. They've still got $3 trillion US. So China isn't ready to go, we don't want to use the US dollar anymore because it's got 3 trillion of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not ready for a confrontation with the United States. We all know it's coming sooner or later, but it's not ready yet. At the moment, if they went to war, it'd probably be about equal. You know, there's no clear victor. Maybe China in 5 or 10 years will be the bigger superpower, but at the moment it isn't. But since 2000, China has been accumulating extraordinary amounts of gold. Now, officially, America has 8,100 tons, and it's stored in Fort Knox. Now, a lot of conspiracy theorists say it isn't there because it hasn't been audited in 60 or 70 years. And the joke is the head of security says to the US president, Mr. President, there's no gold in Fort Knox. And the president says, what do you mean there's no gold in Fort Knox? And the head of security says, there's no gold. And the president says, double the guard. And, you know, that's quite a thoughtful joke. Why will America not have its gold audited? Another theory is simply that the bars just aren't up to modern quality standards. But in any case, that gold hasn't been audited. But let's assume they do have it. 8,000 tons. Remember that figure. China says it has 2,100 and something tons. Every month at the moment, they're just a bit like its treasuries are coming down. Their gold holdings, they're declaring them every month. And every month they're like 30 or 40 tons more than they were a couple of months ago. And again, they're just like drip feeding the information in. But at 2,100 tons is saying it has roughly a quarter of what America has. Now, the motto of China is, we must not shine too brightly. That's the mentality. And for all the noise you hear about everything, they actually keep out of, they don't shine that. It's Russia's done this and Iran's doing that and Saudi Arabia's doing that, but China sort of is fairly humble. It just makes stuff and gets on with it. It's not making big pronouncements. In 2007, China became the largest producer of gold in the world, the largest miner of gold. It overtook South Africa in 2007. And if you look at geological records, since 2000, in the 23 years since 2000, China has produced 7,000 tons of gold, give or take. More than 50% of Chinese gold mining is state-owned. Okay? No gold. China doesn't export its gold. It's not allowed to export it. So all the gold that's mined in China stays in China. 7,000 tons, more than half state-owned. But it's the People's Bank says it's only got 2,000 tons. In addition to being the world's largest producer, China is the world's largest importer. And you can't prove how much gold it's imported because a lot of the gold goes through Dubai, where it's private, through Switzerland, London, where the deals are private. We know what goes through Hong Kong, but nowhere else. But we do know that some, not all, but some of the gold that goes to China goes through the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And we also know that since 2000, 23,000 tons of gold have been withdrawn from the Shanghai Gold Exchange. That's not all the gold that's gone to China. It's just some of it. Probably more than 50% of it, but it's not all of it. A lot of it, the 400-ounce bars don't go through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, for example. But we know 7,000 tons mined, 22,000 tons imported, and there was already 4,000 tons of gold in China in the year 2000, jewelry and central bank holdings. So that's 33,000 tons of gold in China minimum, probably more, because as I say about the imports, 33,000 tons minimum. And then you go, okay, how much of that figure is state-owned? And it's not just the central bank that owns gold. The army owns gold. The sovereign wealth fund owns gold. There's all sorts of other government bodies that own gold. But it's all still Chinese gold, Chinese national gold. And it's just not unreasonable to say that 50% of that gold is state-owned. Alistair McLeod of Gold Money says it's more like 60%. Koos Janssen says it's more like 55%. Everyone's got their own theory, but just say 50%, low ballpark. 50% of 33,000 tons is 16,500 tons. Okay? That is twice what America has. Sorry, it is twice what America says it has.
Right.
16,500 tons. Now, if China just went, yeah, actually, we've got twice as much gold as you, that would be almost a declaration of war. Almost. And it would send the gold price to the moon, and it would completely devalue the dollar. Well, China's got $3 trillion. It's not ready for that type of confrontation yet. But if it ever wanted to weaponize its gold, it's got that card to play. But as I say, its motto is we must not shine too brightly. So it says it's got 2,000 tons, which is the sort of the minimum level that it could admit to having while staying vaguely credible.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's got double. But if at some point it wants the yuan to become the global reserve currency, which it might well do, there has never been a global reserve currency in all of history that did not start out backed by gold and sometimes silver as well. They all got debased into oblivion. They all left the gold standard eventually, but they all started out backed by gold. And if China wanted to go, right, we want reserve currency status for the yuan, all it has to do is make it freely convertible into gold at a given price, because that way it would win global trust. It doesn't mean that every person that owns yuan is going to convert their yuan to gold. People just have to know that they could convert it to gold if they want it, as happened was the case with the pound and the dollar once upon a time. And instantly China wins trust. As I say, it's not ready to do that yet. It's not ready for that kind of confrontation, if indeed it ever wants it. But it's kind of inevitable that it will do. So it's just being discreet about it. But believe you me, China has twice as much gold as the US, at least. And I hope my argument has demonstrated how I've arrived at that conclusion.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so within like the insiders, like the people who write newsletters and whatever, is it well understood that China must be vastly understating their official reserves, and the debate is just over what are they holding, or is this still a novel approach that you're taking?
It's known. 3 or 4 of the gold newsletter writers cover it. There's me and a couple of others who've really, really audited it. There's some guys who say it doesn't have quite as much gold. There's one guy who says, what's his name? Koos Janssen says he thinks 5,000 tons. He thinks a greater percentage is owned by citizenship than 50%, but it's still way more than it says.
And even if it turned out to be like just that the people hold it, that's still significant, just to know, like looking at China as an economic bloc, the fact that there is that much gold sitting within their borders, is significant.
Yeah, and China's told its citizens to buy gold. It's been encouraging them to buy gold since 2007. And the price at which it started encouraging them to buy gold's never gone beneath that price. And it's thought that China will defend that price in order to keep so that its citizens don't lose any money. And if China were ever to go to war, I'm sure if they needed to, citizens for the large part would turn in their gold as a kind of war bond. Citizens do that.
Right.
Particularly loyal ones, and Chinese citizens for the most part are a lot more loyal than Western ones are.
Hey everybody, this is Bob Murphy. Thanks for listening to this clip from the InFi podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing and share this video with others. We've got new episodes dropping every Friday with more insightful discussions. Stay tuned.